Hey everybody, my name is Steve and I want to welcome you to the first in a several video series that is going to cover flying an FPV racing quadcopter. This video series is going to assume that you know absolutely nothing at all about quadcopters. As a matter of fact, you don't even know that they're called quadcopters because you've been calling them drones all along. Well, 4 propellers is a quadcopter, 6 propellers, hexacopter, 8 propellers, octocopter, 3 propellers, tricopter, and I think you get the point. All of the bunch, all lumped together, we just call them multi-rotors. Recently, I was asked to come to the local high school and help the kids build their first quads. The leader of a group as a whole went online and bought a bunch of Chinese kits, and the kits came, and the directions are so poor and the kits are so lacking in all of the necessary items that the kids were completely confused as to what in the heck to do. So I got the call, and in addition to helping the kids in person, I'm going to make this video for them and also put it out there for anybody and everybody who wants to learn. Now, I do not claim to be an expert about this. However, I have one goal in mind, and that is getting the absolute beginner up and flying. So if you're looking for one resource that will take you from zero to flying, stick around, because this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be hard at times, but at the end of it all, you will be flying an FPV quadcopter. Okay, a quick warning. This video is going to be rather long, and we are not going to start building until the next video. But I will say this video is probably the single most important video in the entire series, because if you don't buy the right stuff and you get off on the wrong start, you're never ever going to get in the air. I'm going to share with you lessons learned to help you avoid the pitfalls of buying the wrong stuff, not buying enough stuff, buying too much stuff, and just all that kind of stuff in general. But there are a million variables in this hobby, and if you skip this video, you're liable to go out and buy the wrong parts, buy parts that aren't compatible with each other. And then, of course, there's the most frustrating part of all, which is having 95% of everything built and built right, but you still can't fly because you're missing something that seems insignificant, but yet is extremely important because you can't fly without it. So I urge you to stick around, watch the entire video. It'll probably end up being somewhere around 30 minutes-ish, but that 30 minutes is going to save you hours, if not days or weeks, waiting for parts to arrive if you go ahead and do it incorrectly. All right, so getting started here. All right, this is a 220 size quadcopter, and essentially what 220 is the distance from rotor to rotor in centimeters. Forgive the crudeness of this one. This is a 250 size quad. This is a 250 size quad. This is my favorite. This is my favorite size for the FPV racing quads. This is a 450 size quad. This one goes back quite a ways. And here we've got another quadcopter. It's called a splash drone. It's kind of a Phantom ripoff. Here we've got a 550 size hexacopter. Hexacopter means 6 propellers. And then over here we've got a 900 hexacopter. All right, let's get started. Let's talk about the very basics of what is needed to fly a quadcopter. First and foremost, you're going to need a frame. Here's a frame kit. Comes with all the carbon fiber parts and pieces that you might need. It also comes with a bunch of screws, comes with some standoffs. These are standoffs right here, and we'll get further into that. And more screws, okay? It's important to know that all frames are not created equal. We're going to get back to that in just a second. Another thing that you're going to need to fly a quadcopter is you're going to need 4 motors. Now, these motors typically come in, these are kits of 2, and this is what they look like. All right, so when you buy motors, you're going to need 4 of them, and you're going to need 2 clockwise motors, and you're going to need 2 counterclockwise motors. And it does make a difference. You cannot fly with 3 clockwise motors and 1 counterclockwise motors. There's a fundamental difference in them, and we'll get back to that. But for now, just know that you need motors. All right, let's talk about an integral part of this whole thing. Probably the single most important part of the deal is the flight controller. This is an SP Racing F3 version 1. Now, this flight controller is kind of old. The reason why I'm going to be building with this particular flight controller is because the requisition for the high school kids that I was telling you about earlier, that requisition went in like 2 or 3 years ago, and they actually just started getting these things in. So this is a F3. There are, as of 2020, there are F4s and F7s. So there are newer flight controllers, but this is what I'm going to base this build on. You are also going to need something called an ESC. An ESC is an electronic speed controller. And essentially what these guys do is they take the signals from the flight controller, which we haven't talked about yet, and they send the signals to the motors, basically telling the motors how fast to spin. And we need 4 of those. We need 1 for each motor. Now, as of the filming of this video, there are much newer options. There's 4-in-1 ESCs everywhere. But I feel the need to reiterate that the reason why I'm using the equipment that I'm using is to replicate what the high schoolers have, and that's who I'm making this video for. Alright, in addition to our flight controller, we're going to need a power distribution board. And this is a power distribution board right here. So essentially this guy right here is going to basically be soldered to a battery, and then the rest of those pluses and minuses are for our ESCs, LED lights, etc., etc. We'll come back to this. All right, in order to fly, you're going to need a battery. You're going to need a battery charger. You're going to need a transmitter. So the transmitter you're going to actually hold in your hand and move the sticks based on how you want the quadcopter to behave, amongst other things. And then here, this is the receiver. This actually is on the quadcopter itself. It receives what the transmitter transmits, and it tells the flight controller what to do. You know, yaw, pitch, roll, and let's talk about yaw, pitch, and roll. All right, so here's the quadcopter. He's flying through the air. So pitch is essentially this motion right here. It makes the quadcopter climb or fall accordingly, okay? Roll is this. That's roll, like that. And then there's something called yaw, which is what is this rotation right here. So the quadcopter, you're going to be able to control the yaw to make it turn, the yaw and roll, turn that way, and then of course the pitch to make it go up or down. And of course it's quadcopter, so it can go straight up and down as well. And that is what these sticks are going to do for you. This is the throttle. So as you go like that, it's going to increase the speed of the propellers, make the quad climb. And this is yaw, what we just talked about, which is this motion. And then this is pitch, up and down. And then this is roll this way and roll to the right. All right, and we're going to get to this transmitter shortly. All of this in due time. So let's say here, say for example, we're very excited. We ordered parts from overseas, and we got our frame, and we got our battery charger and our battery. We got our ESCs and our motors. We got our flight controller and our power distribution board. We got our receiver and our transmitter, and we are ready to go. We are ready to fly. We're all excited. Well, the reality is that it's not that simple. A lot of these kits don't ship with everything that you need. Imagine how excited you'll be when all of this stuff arrives, only to be disappointed to find out that, for example, the pins for your flight controller, they're not already soldered on. So here's the flight controller right here. See the pins? They're not soldered on at all. Okay, so that's one thing that you need to take in consideration, is that when you're building your own quad, some soldering is going to be necessary. You don't need a soldering iron like that. I've used this old Radio Shack one for years and years and years, and it's done me just fine. Here's another little tricky little thing that might goof you up. You get your battery, you're all excited, get ready to go charge it for the very first time, and you realize it's got an XT60 connector. What if your battery charger that you bought has a connector that looks like that? Or a connector that looks like that? What do you do? Okay, these are the little things that nobody tells you about that you can get tripped up on that could result in you waiting another week to several weeks to fly just because of something dumb. I've seen flight controllers come without the pins. What in the world are you supposed to do with a flight controller without pins? Unless, of course, you order pins ahead of time, like I've done. Now here's another thing. All ESCs are not created equal. Some ESCs are called opto ESCs, and they're going to require a UBEC to run. We're going to get more into that a little bit later. All of these things we're going to come back to when it makes sense, when we're really focusing in on these specific areas. We're going to come back to it. Power distribution boards are going to be a little bit different too. Like say for example on this 220 quad, you can see the power distribution board, but take a look at the 250 quad. Look at the power distribution board on the 250. Now this is for an octocopter. It just happens to be something I had laying around, but you can still use it for a quadcopter. Take a look at the size difference when you put them right next to each other. And as you can see, this particular frame right here is made for that size pad, whether it be a Hexatronics or just a quad, whatever, it doesn't matter. And obviously this guy right here is meant for this much smaller frame. What about this? This little guy right here. This little guy right here, I recommend for every single quad. It is a buzzer or an alarm that you can set your radio to make go off. If you lose your drone, this can also be rigged to go off when your battery starts to get too low. And you don't want to run these LiPo batteries too low, or they won't come back from the dead. But we'll get back to that later. Lots and lots and lots of stuff to get back later. And then of course, we're going to ignore the FPV stuff until the very end. All of this right here is going to be enough to tide you over for a while. And what I want to do is I want to get you up and flying. Once we're up and flying, then we can worry about the FPV stuff. But this right here is enough of a challenge in of itself. All right, we're not building yet. We still are in the buying process. So we have to make good decisions while purchasing so that we can have a better experience while building. All right, so another mandatory thing on our what to buy list is propellers. Where would we be without propellers? Standoffs are the one thing that most kits are notorious for leaving out, to the point where I felt the need to be able to get all of these. And they come on the slow boat from China. So I've stocked up on them so that I never ever have to deal with not having standoffs again. Standoffs of everything. The other thing that I've also started to accumulate are all of these M3 and M2.5 nuts, bolts, and screws. I keep a wide variety of these things just in case. That's the difference between getting something built in a few hours and getting something almost built in a few hours and waiting for things to come over on the slow boat from, yes, China. These are called Dean's connectors. If you ever need any of these are Dean's connectors. And these guys are XT60s right here. And then I've got a whole bunch of one thing to another. I don't remember whether I made these or bought these, but there's a power distribution board from a long time ago. And various and sundry other things like not running out of pins, my ability to make my own servo connectors there as well. Also, don't necessarily need this many, but I invested in a wide assortment of these nylon nuts and screws of various sizes. So those are the ones that I invested in that I use the most. And standoffs of every shape, size, length, and color. Buy some heat shrink. And I'll leave links for all of this stuff, but you want some heat shrink. Yes, lots and lots and lots of heat shrink. Definitely lots of heat shrink. Also get a wide assortment of twist ties and these guys right here, which actually work better than twist ties because they're more flexible and they're softer. I forget what they're called, but I'll make sure that I leave a link in the description to where you can get those guys. Another thing we got to talk about is tools. So these four things right here that look like screwdrivers are like Allen keys. Much easier to use Allen keys, but you're still going to need some Allen keys because you're going to need some really, really small ones. Like the third to the smallest here, which is this one right here, is what you're going to need if you buy these motors to get these motors on and off. So here's another tool set that I can't live without. These are just flat blade and Phillips head screwdrivers. These nylon screws are Phillips head, so makes these guys very, very valuable. And then, I lose stuff all the time. Not everything in here is magnetic, but this little tray really, really helps me to avoid losing stuff all over the place. So just another recommendation, not a mandatory, but a nice to have. Another thing I recommend is a multimeter. You don't need an expensive one. You can probably pick one up at Harbor Freight for $10. But wherever you feel comfortable in terms of how much you want to spend on the multimeter. All right, so I have invested in a pretty nice soldering station. I've had it for a while. It works really good. It's got both a heat gun and a soldering iron. But for $10, you can get the Radio Shack special. But it's no longer sold at Radio Shack. It's on Amazon. But any iron will do. I had this one for years and years and years. So there's that. And you'll need solder as well. My favorite solder is the 6040 rosin core. It's got lead in it. It's bad for you. It'll make you die quicker, but it works a heck of a lot better than the lead-free kind. But I'm going to just go ahead and recommend the lead-free kind because I don't want you to die. Also some solder wick for when you get carried away, and then the solder sucker for when you really get carried away. This thing, you just put it on there and like that. Good stuff. This is called a helping hands. It's got little alligator clips here to hold your stuff for you. You can kind of push them close together and imagine 2 wires between there, and then they've got, then you can just get in there with the soldering iron yourself. So that's one kind of helping hands. Here's another kind of helping hands. I don't remember where I got this, but I'll leave a description for it once I figure it out. This is another kind of helping hands. This is awesome for those XT60 plugs because they fit real nice, like right in there. And if you want to get carried away, there's this guy right here with a nice solid base. He's got 5 arms that stick up and a really, really nice light with a magnifying glass. So, wire cutters and strippers, needle nose pliers. Not mandatory but helpful are these little picks. And then, of course, scissors, more wire cutters, tweezers. I mean, we're really kind of getting down to the nice to haves. Here's another one of these things that you don't need, but it's nice to have, is the epoxy. So don't be intimidated by this huge list of things. The real necessary things are the ones that I led off with. And the rest of the stuff is, nice to haves. I've been doing this for a long, long, long time. Therefore, I've acquired a good amount of stuff. So, all right, enough with this section of the video. Let's move on. One thing I'm going to do in this video is shy away from making specific recommendations where possible, because the reality is if you ask 100 people, what's the best motor to get, you might get 100 different answers. If you ask 100 people what the best radio is to get, you might get 100 different answers. Same with ESCs, same with batteries, and all the way down the line. So making specific recommendations like that is too subjective. So what I want to do is I want to stick to the facts that differentiate some of these things. And let's start with ESCs, for example. Later in the series, you're going to find that your ESCs are actually attached directly to your power distribution board, which is basically powered from a battery. So your ESCs are going to be getting 12 volts. Well, your flight controller only needs 5 volts, and if you send 12 volts to your flight controller, it's going to go poof. So take a look at the difference between these two ESCs. First, we have an opto ESC. It's a 12 amp opto ESC. And if you look at this one right here with the servo connector on the end of it, it only has 2 wires. That's the opto. If we look at this ESC, which is also a 12 amp, it actually says on it that it's a BEC. ESC. I know it's a little confusing. It is characterized by 3 wires going to the flight controller. So basically what I'm getting at is that if you've got BEC ESCs with 3 leads, then you don't need anything additional to power your flight controller. However, if you've got opto ESCs with 2 leads on the servo, you're going to need something called a UBEC, which basically is going to come directly from your distribution board, and this is what you're going to plug into your flight controller so that it only gets the 5 volts that it needs. When it comes to radios, same thing. Ask 100 people, you get 100 different responses. And just as a reminder, I keep making reference to the FlySky FST6 because this is the one that the kids have at the high school. I don't recommend getting this one because the receiver that comes with it is PWM, and it won't take a PPM or an S-bus at all. If you step up to its more expensive brother, this one right here, it has PPM, and we're going to We're going to learn more about what that means later. Just know that PPM is a lot easier to hook up than PWM. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to use this radio and PWM. If you can afford it and you think that this is something that you're going to want to be doing for a long time, just go straight for the Tranus. This is a Tranus by FR Sky. This is a 2-position switch right here. This is a 3-position switch, 3-position, 3-position, and so on and so forth. This is more radio than most people will ever need. It's programmable to the nth degree. It even talks to you. It'll talk to you. You can program it to say anything that you want. And
failsafe on, failsafe on. Sport mode, failsafe on. Stabilize mode. Loiter mode, altitude hold. Loiter mode, stabilize mode.
Okay, so this thing is amazing, amazing, amazing. We do a whole series of videos on this radio alone, but it's much more expensive than this guy right here. All right, so we've hit on transmitters. Let's talk about receivers. This guy right here is, in the box, is going to have a PWM receiver. That's that guy right in there, okay? PWM, all that really means for you as a beginner is it's going to be a little bit harder to wire. In this video, we're going to wire a PWM. Then you jump to PPM. This, incidentally, is only about $10, and this is a PPM. So essentially, from this to the flight controller, you're going to actually have one servo connector. With this one, you're going to have however many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, a bunch. All right. So basically, the PWM is just harder to hook up. This one, you're going to have one servo cable going from this to the flight controller, and that's going to go in the PPM slot. And I'll have links to all this stuff in the description where you can find it. And then this right here, the X8R, is an FR Sky, and this one has got S-Bus. It's got up to 16 channels. So pretty awesome. With S-Bus, you're only going to need one servo cable from here to the flight controller. So easy to hook up. Easy to hook up, a little harder to hook up. Okay, let's look at flight controllers. These two guys right here are both SP Racing F3 V1s. And the reason why I'm using F3s is because these are the flight controllers that were purchased by the local high school that I'm trying to help out. Ignoring the pins, can you see a difference between these two? Well, the answer is no, you can't, but they are very different. Flipping them over, now can you see a difference? The difference is right here, that little silver thing right there. That is a barometer. So this guy right here is what you'll see advertised as a 6 DOF, which is degrees of freedom. It's got, the gyro and the accelerometer. This one has got the gyro, the accelerometer, a magnetometer, and then that silver thing is a barometer. So for racing FPV, this is all you need. If you're looking for things that will assist you with a more stable flight and that sort of thing, then choose this one. Right now on the market, you're going to see F3s, and then there are newer ones. There's a F4 generation and an F7 generation out now, but this video series is going to be based on these little F3s. This is the basic right there, and then this guy right here you'll see advertised as the deluxe. This one will say 10 DOF, this one will say 6 DOF, and that is the difference between the two. Okay, let's talk batteries. Batteries are kind of confusing, so I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I possibly can. Batteries are going to be expressed in what you'll see as 2S, 3S, 4S, and you'll also see, I believe, you'll also see 6S. And essentially what that means, that's the number of packs are piled on top of each other in a series. That's what the S means. So this one right here has got 4. This is a 4S battery. This one right here is a 3S battery. You can't see the packs here, but there's 3 of them in there. So at 3S, your voltage is going to be 11.1, and with a 4S, your voltage is going to be 14.8. Now, this number here, 1300 milliamps, against this number right here, 1500 milliamps, Okay, I'm going to use really, really dumb analogies here just to try to make it as easy as possible. But milliamps, that's like the size of your gas tank. Looking at a 4S compared to another 4S, like right here, there's a 4S compared to a 4S. This one's 1300 milliamps. This one is 4000 milliamps. That basically means that this battery has got more fuel in the tank, and it's obviously larger, it's heavier. You're going to get much more flight time out of this than this. But you can't go throwing this thing on a little 250 quad. This is for a much bigger quad. This is for a 450. So coming back to our discussion of 4S versus 3S, these batteries are very similar in their milliamp rating, but this one being a 4S and this one being a 3S, this one's got more voltage. With more voltage, you're going to have more pep. This one is going to fly very well, great for starting out. This one is going to fly very responsive, very fast. So, in my opinion, it's not so much what battery brand to buy than making a decision between whether you want to run 3Ss or 4Ss on your quad. And that brings us to our next discussion, which is battery chargers. If you go with the bottom of the line, bare bones, beginner level one, which is fine, which is perfectly fine, very, very cheap. All right, this is only going to charge up to 3S. If you were to make the mistake of buying that charger and buying a whole bunch of these batteries, you'd be up the creek. If you're wanting to get more out of your charger than that one, then you can step up to this one. This one will charge up to a 6S battery in it, and it will charge other types of batteries in addition to our LiPo batteries. It's a LiPo, LiLo. I've never even used one of those before. LiFEs, NIMH, and NICD. And it basically tells you, 1 to 15 cells there, 1 to 6 cells. It'll charge up to 5 amps, which is pretty fast. So this is a significant step up. In addition to that, notice it has this, which will basically be able to read how many cells the battery has so that it can balance the cells in the battery, which is important. And then it has all of these different types of leads. So hopefully it doesn't matter what kind of battery you get, you'll be able to attach directly to it. So that is a nice step up from the entry-level one. From there, you can step up to this guy right here. This is a beast. This is basically the equivalent of 4 of the ones we just talked about. It has 4 separate computers, can charge 4 different types of batteries at the exact same time, has all kinds of... It can charge, it can balance, it can discharge. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. This one also has dual fans to keep it cool. And one of my favorite things is that jack right there, which is an 11-18 volts, which means you can make yourself one of these guys. And what that means is that you can be out in the middle of nowhere. You can be charging your LiPos off of your car battery. So just a few options for you from the basic to the granddaddy. Next logical question is, which motor should I buy? Well, once again, ask 100 flyers what motor to buy, and you'll get 100 different answers. Personally, my absolute favorite are these Sunny Sky motors. They're 2204s. We've got 2300 kV. We're going to get into what all that means later. They come in packs of 2 with a clockwise and a counterclockwise. But the reason why I'm so pro on these Sunny Sky ones is because I've never had a failure. Not once, not ever. I'm going to wrap this video up right here. I hope that I have done a good job in educating you on the importance of making good decisions when buying all of this stuff. So anyhow, I'm Steve. I'm going to sign off for this video right now, but please like, comment, subscribe, hit that little bell to get notifications because I've got a bunch more videos coming up, including the second in this series where we're going to start building a frame. We're going to finally get to it. So I'll see you in the next video.